Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick, and today, guys, we're going to be jumping down into the world of BTC, taking a look at what's been going on most recently and what I kind of expect to happen next. As I get into the video, if you find it useful and informative, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new, subscribe, tap in the bell and selecting all the notifications, and you will not miss another video update. If you haven't yet joined us in Discord, though, guys, check it out, linked in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7, and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. Okay, let's get right down into this one. Bitcoin paired up with USDT on the hourly chart, and Binance is the data source. And here on this hourly chart, we can just kind of reflect on some of these recent movements that we can see that are going on here with Bitcoin, right? And for the most part, it looks like we have to come down just a fraction more. We can kind of argue that maybe we're in some kind of large ABC structure from this one here. If we move this over into our highs just on this side, we can see maybe 22,700 as a possibility. It's a bit too much to kind of think about that level right at this moment in time. Instead, we want to reflect on this most recent move ever since we had that high on the 4th of February at 1300 UTC. Now, this to me looks like we have to come down to the 1-to-1, maybe the 1.236 if we really want to push for it. I'll highlight this with the yellow box. It would be approximately down here at the 22,900 through to around the 23,778. Okay, so just right up in this little box here. This essentially to me looks like we are doing something like this. One, B and C down here, A, B, and C coming down. And then you can kind of see that all of this may have been some kind of larger ABC structure from here, A, B, and C. And then all of that looks like it's just wrapped up inside this structure here. Now, that would be on the weaker side. As I said, we should be thinking a little bit lower. So it's possible that all of this is just in itself an A wave. We come up only to come back down again later, so we can kind of complete out that structure. Without overcomplicating it, I'll talk about that as time progresses. But for now, it does appear that our next kind of bigger move to the downside appears to be 22,994 to 23,078 on this hourly chart. We are obviously on our oscillator here, the stochastic RSI high, overbought on the 1 hour, but not so much on the 4, 8, or daily, but we are on the weekly. We'll talk about those in a moment. In terms of who is buying and who is selling, we can see from inside our charts here that we have three institutional level investors like whale investors. We've got the 100 Bitcoin or more, the 1,000 Bitcoin or more, the 10,000 Bitcoin or more. And over the last couple of days or so, we've seen a little bit of an uptick here with these wallets. Again, they are still incredibly low, lower than they were back in November and so forth. We've seen the sharks kind of moving up before the pump to the upside, and now they're taking profits. We'll probably see those guys come down a fair bit if and when that price kind of finally peaks out up the upper end. The Kraken size wallets have come down a bit and moved back up a little bit, but again, not too concerned with that. From our retail sized wallets, we can see that the Dolphins are fluctuating. They're starting to take their profits, whereas the other two, such as the shrimps and the krill, not so much. Same to be said about the dust, Bitcoin dust, and obviously low retail investors in general. They think of everything as a bit of a buy the dip opportunity, and so therefore, yes, kind of what you continue to see. In terms of our inflows and our outflows, you can see that there are slightly more in the way of outflows than there are inflows over the weekend, but everything is decreasing as you would usually expect it to, as most weekends we don't see a lot of volume being pushed through the market. So let's go ahead and move on. Into our 4-hour chart, we can see that we are riding and finding support on our 50 EMA. You can see that we're above the 200 on this time frame as well. In fact, if I come back here to our hourly chart just for a second, you can see that the support is being found on the 200 EMA, with resistance currently being found on the 50 EMA. As we come up into the 8-hour chart, we can also see that we are above the 50 EMA and above the 200 EMA, and we are finding ourselves up in this upper resistance between $24,000 and $25,000. There's a lot of supply in this particular area, so just be aware that this is where the resistances are. Now, if I throw the liquidity on here, you can see that that liquidity still sits up there at 25,211, which is an important number. We'll talk about that in a moment. And you can see that there's a fair amount of people going long and a fair amount of people going short. It's pretty much divided between the two, so not too much to kind of talk about from that that point of view. You can see up here within our area of $24,000 and $25,000, we have an order block. Okay, this is where the sellers currently are. That should be no surprise. The buyers, though, the buyers are all the way down here at $15,000. So understanding that we're kind of reaching the upper area where the people are willing to sell, but we're nowhere near where people are willing to buy. So again, gives us an idea as to kind of what people are expecting here. Now, if I remove those and come up into our daily chart, in fact, actually, I'll probably take a daily chart from this point of view. The daily chart on here with our divergence indicator is telling us that there's something that I've been talking about for a while, is we're going up higher highs in prices, yet over here we've got lower highs in our RSI. This is bearish divergence. There's an actual indicator that helps you if you don't want to kind of look at hidden bearish or want to kind of fully understand what hidden bearish divergence versus a classic bearish divergence or bullish divergence is and so forth. The divergence indicator, you can find it under your indicators tab on there, and it basically shows you what's going on. We're losing momentum as we are pushing up. Where's a divergence? Price is going up higher, but people are getting less and less interested in it. So just bear in mind that this has an expiration date to it, and eventually will be turning pretty nasty, and people will be dropping to the downside. Now, before I actually talk about the next one, let's jump over into our weekly. We'll hide that off and throw in our stochastic. Here you can see that the stochastic is overbought, so we are looking for progression to the downside. Okay, so at some point we are looking for rejection. Now, we are currently getting rejected from our 200 EMA. I'm not expecting our weekly close to be above the 200 EMA, which was 23,708 at the moment. So I'm expecting us to kind of stay hovering around here over the weekend. We might wick up into the $24,000 to $25,000 range next week. That's okay. But again, I expect us to close below the 200 EMA here on the weekly time frame. Being overbought, and we're waiting to see us move to the downside. I don't think we've got any divergences on here. No, nothing of note. And our volume profiles are pretty clear. We are decreasing volumes as we're pushing up. So again, we would look at this as a bit of a strange thing to be kind of talking about. Higher highs in price, but driven from lower lows in volume, or lower highs in volumes. Basically, volume is dropping as price pushes up. We know that this is not a real pump because it's not really being backed by much volume. Instead, it's being driven from the DXY, and basically people dumping the dollar in favor of other currencies. So devaluing the dollar means you need more dollars to buy your assets. Doesn't mean that there's a surplus of demand coming in here to buy up a load of Bitcoin. It's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing here is basically a fake pump driven from basically Forex traders dumping USD in favor of any other currency, Forex currency. So you saw the pound sterling, you saw the euro, you saw Japanese yen all going up while the dollar was going down. The DXY therefore goes down. DXY going down means that Bitcoin goes up. So when we start understanding that it's not a huge demand behind the pump to the upside, but actually it's all about the dollar, then you start to understand that actually things are not as bullish as they might appear to be when you just have a couple of candlesticks on a chart. Dig a little bit deeper and you'll find what's going on below. So ultimately, this is a ticking time bomb on our weekly chart. I do estimate that this is going to be pretty brutal when it does get going, but there's no guarantee that it does move all the way down. Now let's talk about those Wyckoff accumulation patterns. The Wyckoff accumulation pattern is still in play in my opinion. There's a couple of different ways you can draw it. I've drawn it this way with the ST in phase B being complete, and there's one other scenario where the ST in phase B has not been completed, and all of this here is just a selling climax. We're up here is at the moment an automatic rally. We've got to come down into new lower lows for the secondary test of phase B, then go up again, then come down to a spring, and so forth, right? And that would be a dragged out variation. Now in my schematic, what I've drawn out here, we are moving up into the peak of phase B. We're waiting to come on down and retest 18,600. We'll have to see how we react to 18,600. Now, if we do push up higher than 25,211, then this, what I've drawn here, is invalid. It is not a correct count. And then we'll move on to the other variation where we can kind of then start plotting it. These are the only variations I can see though. So yeah, it is what it is for now. But essentially, when it comes to Bitcoin here, I think we have still got a little bit more moves to the upside to be had. We can see that on our daily chart where we're oversold. Okay, so we know that there's some form of progression to the upside to be had here. We're not done moving up yet. And I do think we're going to find ourselves grabbing that liquidity at $25,000 before we actually get this reversal to the downside. But we don't want to be kidding ourselves. There is bearish divergence here. There is no bullish divergence that I can see, but there are some requirements to continue pushing up a little bit further. When we are Complete with this, I'm expecting at least a 50% drop to the downside. I would expect us to be testing the $18,000 areas. There isn't really a lot of support to be found outside of some of these key areas that we've already consolidated on, such as 21,000. Maybe if we come down towards 19, there's some consolidation around there. Lose those, and we are talking 18. Then we're talking cascading to 17, and then down into those lows. So just kind of bear that in mind. Buyers are all the way stacked down here at $15,000 to $16,000. Sellers are up here at around that $24,000 to $25,000. Everything in between is just fair game and is liquidity that can be grabbed by various different participants, mainly smart money and something and people like that, right? Institutional players, big funds, and all that wonderful stuff. So I'm going to leave this video there. A few things to kind of be leaving you with and to think about, essentially, is that we see continued selling pressure from large money, big money, smart money, and we see continued support from retail money, or usually called dumb money. So we want to be a little bit cautious with that, but essentially it does look like we have a little bit further to go to the upside before we finally actually start descending. And I do think a test around 18,000 is the most likely scenario, and how it reacts there is going to tell us whether or not we are going to be going down into new lower lows. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Really interested. Join us in Discord if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you all in the next one.